Hi friends, we're gonna learn French seam today with this sheer silk organza and something that people might use on a sheer really lightweight fabric if they don't want to serge it or use a zigzag stitch so that the seam will be nice and hidden and small and create just a clean finished edge without bulk. So I'm gonna sew these two ends together, and I'm not making anything. This is just a demo. Start out with a classic seam, but this part is going to be trimmed about 1/4 of an inch. For demo purposes, I'm going to trim some of the other fabric. Okay, and now I'm going to turn this inside out, press it, and I'll be back. Hi, okay, and I like to use pins quite a bit. So now that I have my seam inside, I'm going to pin right along the seam. And what this is doing is it's encasing the raw edge okay. See my new seam allowance right there? It's about 3/8. You always want to back stitch at the end and the beginning so you can knock those off. Okay, so now I've got this, and now that is the inside. So let's say this was my sleeve, and now my sleeve would have a nice small seam. All my little raw edges are tucked in. Okay. All right, and then I'll press it and it would be ready to go. Isn't that neat? A nice seam finishing. Great, that was French seams. All right, it's pressed and there we have it. A nice French seam. The seam allowance is in here and it's sewn together. And I didn't use a zigzag or a serger. It's just a nice flat seam. Isn't that beautiful? Love French seams. Okay, bye guys. All right, we're gonna talk about flat-filled seams, something you might see commonly on jeans or pants. Okay, the flat-filled seam. So you wanna have right sides out, wrong sides together, and you want your seam allowances to meet. So you're gonna sew in 1/2 inch from the edge going to trim one side of the seam allowance. Trim it about halfway, about 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so there's one side longer, one side shorter, and we want to press the seam super flat and then fold it over and top stitch it. So I'm gonna go press it. Okay, so I pressed the seam, but I don't feel like it's laying very flat. If I wanted to give myself more seam allowance, you know, could have laid a little flatter, but for demo purposes, I am pinning this flap, folding it and pinning it about every inch. Okay, and now I'm going to top stitch along this edge. Just right on the edge. I have to manipulate my fabric quite a bit because I have a small sample. My thread did not like me there. Okay. Okay, so that is a flat felled seam. This is a technique commonly used on pants for sturdiness at the seam. See how nice it looks? I could have done a typical jean color thread, but yeah, flat felled